learning, which I believe in English. Beautiful Shlema. Everyone that needs. And we start Yid Chasamet Beis B'Shavin Shemashikin Asamayim B'Kli Evan Chulu. Everyone agrees that you're allowed to use a stone keli to purify water by lowering it into a mikveh. The stone, but the water was tamei. Stone kelim don't become tamei, but the water's tamei. So when you do hashaka, which means you let the water that's in the keli connect to the water that's in the mikveh, so that purifies the water. Everyone agrees you're allowed to do that on Yom Tov. My aval le matpilin. What does it mean? But you're not allowed to be toivel. It means you can't be toivel a keli together with the water to purify the keli. Okay. As if you would have a keli that would actually be tamei, maybe a wood keli or something, other type of keli, that you wouldn't be allowed to be toivel. When it says mani masnisin, who's the author of our Mishnah? Lei Rebbe v'lei Rabbanan. It can't be the opinion of Rebbe. It can't be the opinion of the Rabbanan. The Tanya was started in the Beitza. If you take a look at this Beitza, what we're doing is we're comparing this Beitza to the Mishnah. The Mishnah said two cases. You're allowed to do hashaka to the water, but you're not allowed to be toivel the keli. The Beitza is also going to have two cases, but the options are going to be like 100%. You're allowed to do hashaka and toivel the keli, or you're not allowed to do hashaka and you're not allowed to be toivel the keli, which doesn't fit with our Mishnah, which has hashaka yes, toivel the keli no. So that's our problem over here. It goes like this. The Tanya was started in the Beitza. Ein matbilin es keli al gav mim of l'tare. Can't be toivel the keli. So far, so good, right? That's what our Mishnah said. However, it says ve'ein mashikin es hamayim b'kli even l'tare. But you also can't be toivel. But you also can't do hashaka to the water. That's where we have a problem. So this first opinion, Divrei Rebbe, doesn't fit with our Mishnah because of the hashaka aspect which we allow. The Chacham say matbilin keli al gav mim of l'tare u'mashikin es hamayim b'kli even l'tare. But according to the Chachamim, you're allowed to be toivel the keli also. You're allowed to do hashaka, of course, but you're also allowed to be toivel the keli, which that doesn't fit with our Mishnah. So we're asking, which opinion is the author of our Mishnah? It's like half of Rebbe and half of the Chachamim, but we don't have anyone that's 100%. Mani, I Rebbe kasha hashaka, I Rabbanan kasha hatvala, hatvala. Okay. Yeah, I have the American yeshiva pronunciation, so nothing fits. Doesn't fit with this, it doesn't fit with that. So Rebbe doesn't match with the Mishnah because he allows Rebbe allowed hashaka. Rebbe didn't fit with the Mishnah. Oh, because Rebbe doesn't allow hashaka. Yeah, that's the problem. Rebbe's extra strict. And it doesn't Rabbanan kasha atvala. And according to the Rabbanan, it's a problem because they're extra lenient. They allow the tefillah of the keli. The Gemara says, Iba Yisema Rebbe, Iba Yisema Rabbanan. You could say we have two ways of answering this. And both of these answers are going to involve a period in middle of punctuation in middle of the sentence. We're going to divide the sentences in half. Iba Yisema Rebbe, Iba Yisema Rabbanan. Iba Yisema Rebbe, Reisha the Beitza b'Yom Tov, the Seifa b'Shabbos, the Kulam Asnisim b'Yom Tov. Goes like this. You ready? Let's take a look at the Beitza again. Take a look at the Beitza again. It's not complicated. It's just Ein matbilin the Tanya. You see where it says the Tanya? We're going back to the Beitza. Ein matbilin as a keli al gav mim of l'tare. You can't be toivel the keli. That's referring to. That's the Reisha. That's talking on Yom Tov. On Yom Tov, you're not allowed to be toivel the keli. Now, what about hashaka? Well, you only said that you're not allowed to be toivel the keli, but hashaka. Yes, so on Yom Tov you can do hashaka. Let's go on. Vein mashikin es amayim b'kli even lataran. That's b'Shabbos. On Shabbos you're not allowed to do hashaka. Even you can't even do hashaka. So on Yom Tov you're allowed to do hashaka, but you can't be toivel l'keli. On Shabbos you can't do anything. You can't do hashaka. You can't be toivel l'keli. Now that's exactly what our Mishnah said. And our Mishnah is talking about the Yom Tov. We're allowed to do hashaka, but you're not allowed to be toivel l'keli, which is the beginning of the Beitza. Let's do the Chachamim. The Chachamim matfilin keli al gav meim of l'tarei. The Chachamim say that you could be toivel the keli. When is that? You can be toivel the keli. They hold on Yom Tov you're allowed to be toivel the keli. If on Yom Tov you're allowed to be toivel the keli, then you're also allowed to do hashaka. Well, that's not going to fit with the Mishnah, but let's go further. Mashikin asamayim b'kli even l'taran on Shabbos. So on Shabbos you can do hashaka. This we never discussed. On Shabbos you can do hashaka to purify the water, but only hashaka. You can't be toivel the keli. Well, this could also theoretically fit with our Mishnah if we say that our Mishnah is talking about on Shabbos, which we weren't doing. But we can adjust the way we understood the Mishnah and say that the Mishnah is talking about on Shabbos, where you're allowed to do hashaka, but you're not allowed to do tefillas kelim. So one more time, Yibay saying Rebbe, Reisha the Bryce of the Yom Tov, Seif Shabbos Kula must needs to be Yom Tov, and the Mishnah we're talking about Yom Tov. Let's go to the top of your test. Yibay saying Rabbana Kula must needs to be Shabbos. You could say that the Mishnah is talking about Shabbos as well. Now, if you want to look back at the Mishnah is talking about Chal Liyei Sachar HaShabbos. If Yom Tov is on a Sunday, B'Sham Yom Matvil Nesakol Melifnei Shabbos B'Sil Laim Kelim Melifnei Shabbos Vadim B'Shabbos. You go on. B'Shavan Shemashikin Esamayim B'Kli Even L'Tara Navalei Matvilin. So there is an option of saying the Mishnah is talking about Shabbos. And it is an option of saying the Mishnah is talking about Yom Tov. We had both of those days right there in the Mishnah. So you can learn it like Rebbe that is talking about Yom Tov. You can learn it like the Rabbanan that's talking about Shabbos, and both of them will fit it perfectly in the Mishnah. Okay. Yeah, there's problematic Yersoyos here that Rashi is dealing with. If you see these huge Rashis. Tan Rabbanan. Keli shenitma mi erev Yom Tov ein matbil noise bein hashmashas. If the keli was tamei on erev Yom Tov, let's say is today. It is erev Yom Tov. Bein hashmashas, twilight. Like right after Shkia, before Tzeis, which we consider bein hashmashas time. You can't be toivel a keli then. Now, this is specific to. This wouldn't apply to like a woman that's going to the mikvah or something. This applies to someone that something that requires, or someone that requires hereb shemesh. But after they go to the mikvah, they have to wait for sunset. Now the problem over here is that if you toivel bein hashmashas, that means you're being toivel on Yom Tov, possibly, and it's even worse than that because you possibly can't use it on Yom Tov either because you have to wait for Herav Shemesh. You have to wait for tomorrow night to use it. It becomes just a totally problematic. Okay. Reb Shimon Shazuri Shazuri says we really shouldn't allow anyone to use the mikveh, not again only for something that requires Herav Shemesh, not for a nida or something. Bein hashmashas. Why? Because they may think that bein hashmashas is permissible, and they may think that they'll be allowed to use it for the truma or whatever you require herav shemesh. When the sun sets, it becomes totally pure. First the mikveh, then the sun. They may think that I got it in. It was close, but I got it in. And really, bein hashmashas is a suffix. They don't know what's going on. Bein hashmashas. You should never allow anyone to ever use the mikveh bein hashmashas, even on a weekday. It's not a Yom Tov issue. They don't know the halachas issue. The Gemara says, "V'tanakama lo'boy herav shemesh." Why is the Tanakama allowing weekday? Gemara says, "Amar Rava." Rava says, "Ashkachtinu l'Rabbanan debei Rav v'yas v'kamu." I went to the yeshiva of Rav. Rav wasn't around in Rava's days. But with the yeshiva of Rav was around, I guess. Where would the yeshiva be? In Surah. Rava was in Mechuzah. Rava may have gone to Pumbedisa also. I'm not sure. Rabba was in Pumbedisa. Yeah, Rava I think also was, but he was the rabbi of Mechuzah. Rabba was in Pumbedisa. Probably Pumbedisa. South. Surah is south. Anyway, Rava enters the yeshiva of Rav. He hears him learning. They say, can you see the person's intention from his actions? We knew what he was thinking. Okay, how did you do that? It says, what's the case? Going to knock it mana biyade verot vazel ben hashmashas latule. He has a keli in his hand and he's running. Okay, and it's ben hashmashas. Aha. Mar savar haideka rot vazel made the yada the bayar of shemesh. It must be. Why was he running? He knows. He knows that there's an issue of ben hashmashas. So he was trying to get there before ben hashmashas because he knows he needs to get there before. So in order to get a hair of shemesh. So therefore we say, okay, if he knows that there's an issue of hair of shemesh, then there would only be a problem on Yom Tov that he's going to be taival. See what happened. He actually gets there and it's a little late. He says, okay, I'll be taival. I'm here anyway. I'll put it in and I'll wait for it tomorrow. You say, oh, on Yom Tov, that's a problem. You can't be taival on Yom Tov, things that you can't use. You can't be taival on Yom Tov anyway, especially if you can't use it. But we saw that he was running. So if it's on Yom Tov, then there's an issue. But if there's a weekday, then he knows the halacha. You see he's running. Mar Savar, the other one says, Machas Malachtehu de Karat. He's not running because of Herav Shemesh, because he knows the halacha. He's running because of his work. He's running. He's a busy guy. So it has nothing to do with Herav Shemesh, not because he knows any halachas. This machlekes over here, Reb Shimon Shazuri says, you see someone that's rushing to the mikveh, ben hashmashas, it does not mean that he knows what he's doing. It just means whatever, he's in a rush for whatever reason. Yeah. Like the Kotske said, they told him that they have a train now. You can go from Minsk to Warsaw. It only takes 3 hours. So he says, what's the rush? What are you rushing for? Okay. Vamina lo ana. So that was what Rava heard in the yeshiva of Rav. Vamina lo ana, I said to them differently. Everyone agrees that you look at what he's doing and you can tell what he's thinking. Ki pligi, going to itme v'pachas mikadasha. Basal kami derabana l'shile v'pachas ma'adasha itme ve'ilai. Goes like this. It's very interesting. He has two shilas. He has two things that are going on. He's showing up in hashmashas. Okay, we don't know if he knows the halacha. If he would be running ben hashmashas, we'd assume he knows the halacha. But he shows up by the rabbanim ben hashmashas, and he has another shaila. He has another keli that touched something that was less than a adasha of a sheret. Very small amount. Adasha is a lentil. Very small amount of a sheret. He wants to know, is it tamei? Now we are seeing that he doesn't know a certain halacha. Does that mean that he also doesn't know the halacha of Herav Shemesh? Now, Adasha is not written clearly in the Torah. Herav Shemesh is written clearly in the Torah. So Herav Shemesh is more of a law that he should really know. But from the fact that he doesn't know about Adasha, does that mean that he also doesn't know about Herav Shemesh? Mar savar midahole gamar Herav Shemesh namale gamar. One says, well, you see, he doesn't know. This is Reb Shimon. Rav is saying the second opinion first. Reb Shimon Shazuri. You see, he doesn't know this halach. He probably doesn't know that either. Mar savar bahudle gamar Herav Shemesh gamar. He doesn't know about Dasha, but Herav Shemesh he obviously knows. Yeah. my grandmother would say she wanted to know, like, to meet people that weren't religious, wanted to know, like, what's their education level in Yiddishkeit. You see, you can't ask them if they know what Kiddush is. Everyone knows what Kiddush is. You have to ask them if they know what Havdalah is. That's another level. So if they don't know what Havdalah is, okay, if they went to Hebrew school or okay. Matbilin migav legav. You have a new thing, new discussion over here. On Yom Tif, you can be toivel from one level to another level. Yeah, there's different gersais here. What it's really supposed to say, we'll see in a minute. Taner Rabbanan was taught in a brisa. Ketan migav legav. What's the case of migav legav from one level to another? In other words, on Yom Tif, usually you're not allowed to be toivel. Actually, there was a machlokes if a person could be toivel. That's a machlokes b'shamai and b'silo. And on Shabbos also. Even on Shabbos, b'silo holds a person could be toivel. But everyone agrees that it can be toivel from level to level. Breitelasis gitay al gav kadai or badai. Badai al gav gitay oisa. This means like this: that if a person has kalim that he purified them for his gat, which is his wine press, and now he wants to use it for his olive press, so he wants to put it in the mikveh again. For whatever reason, it's like the Gemara is considering it like a mishagas. So since there's no real significance to that tefillah, yeah, it was tamei before, but there's certain things that you want to be toivel. It has to do with the level of he didn't have kavana that he was going to use it for this. There is possibilities that if you toivel for truma, but that's not enough for kodesh, or you toivel for chulin, that's not enough for truma. So this person is he wants to do an extra tefillah just like for no reason. So that we say that that's allowed because you're not being misaken anything. You were tahor, everything was tahor already before. You were tahor, the person. What's the case of from one group to another group? If a person was toivel and because he wants to eat the carbon pesach with one group, and then he decides he's going to eat with another. He didn't have that in mind when he went to the mikveh. People could do this. I mean, you go to the mikveh in the morning.
Is it a restriction?
What we're saying here is that there's different ways of learning it. It could be that
I went to the mikveh, I did not think I was going to be going to Palm Beach today, so I should go again because now I'm going to Palm Beach.
Yeah. So that would be insignificant, and you'd be allowed to do that on Shabbos because it's not a real tefillah. It's not changing anything. You're not misaking anything. Now, but there are other Rishonim that learn it differently. That it's actually from one level to another level, and there is a significance to it. But because that significance is not the deraisa, it's not a real significance, so it's also acceptable. There's different ways of learning this. Yeah.
I'm smelling aroma here because you can't go for a good reason. I mean, can you go to the mikveh again on Shabbos? If I went for Shabbos to go to shul and I go again, just stop.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. Sounds like you can. Sounds like
so. How much more so you even just go somewhere else?
Right. Right. The problem is Beishamai holds that you're not allowed to go to the mikveh at all on Shabbos because you're misaking the person. So according to him, you can't go once, you can't go twice, you can never go. However, if you already went once, like yesterday, and now you want to go again for no reason.
But if you went today on Shabbos, can you go for no reason again?
Yeah.
Just go hang out in the mikveh.
Yeah. Well, you have issues of rechitza. You have other issues. Yeah, we're not talking about that. It's a mikveh that's warm, that's heated, and then it's in a bathhouse.
Still trying to find the excuse to go swimming in Florida.
Then we'll talk after.
Changing status.
There's no change of status, so it's not. No. Okay. B'Shamai, we have a new mission. B'Shamai is a totally new topic. Maybe, yeah.
Just before you go, he said that I thought that they had to be registered where they need to call it Beitza.
Yeah.
And
So
then
what's
you said-
happening is that he's registered on one group, but they didn't check the Korban Pesach yet. So he's allowed to switch to another group. So it's all in that
It's like a
interim.
re-registration.
Yeah. Has to pay again. So okay, now we have a machlekes bishamim revin shlamim ve'in simchen aleim avalei oilas. Bishamai says on Yom Tov, you're allowed to shech. You're allowed to shech. There's no problem with shechting because you're going to eat it. Now, a korban shlamim, you actually eat from it. That's why it's called a shlamim, that it's peace. Because the owners get to eat, and the kayanim get to eat, and the mizbeach gets to eat. But you also eat from it. So you're allowed to bring a shlamim. We're going to see exactly what type of shlamim, but you're allowed to bring a shlamim on Yom Tov. Very nice. But you're not allowed to lean on it. You can't do smicha. It doesn't tell you. Samach yada, you lean on it. You're not allowed to be mishtamish bal chaim. You can't use them. You're not allowed to ride an animal on Yom Tov. And leaning on it is very similar to that. You have to put all your weight on it. But you can't bring an oila, because in oila there's nothing edible. Everything goes, an oila is totally burnt on the mizbeach, so it's not eichel nefesh. Beisil leimer mevi'in shlamin ve'oilas v'semchen aleim. You can do both of these. What's the header for the oila? I'll have to see. Amar Ula. We have a machlekes. What's the pshat in the machlekes? Ula says machlekes b'shalmei chagiga lismaich va'oilas ria likarev. We're not talking about stam. Someone has animals that he was going to bring because he decided to donate. This is a special sacrifice that's brought for the Yom Tov. This is called the Shalmei Chagiga. He has to bring a shlamim for the holiday. However, okay, that's what he's allowed, because the time when it's supposed to be brought is on Yom Tov. So it's like a tzorech hayom. So you could bring it on Yom Tov. And va'olas riya is whenever you go to the Beis Hamikdash. Le'yero panai rekam, you have to bring a korban. So you have to bring a korban oila. So you came to the Beis Hamikdash for the holiday. You have to bring an oilas riya. So you're allowed to bring it. And you're allowed to bring it on Yom Tov according to Beis Hillel, not according to Beis Shammai. The Beis Shammai sabri v'chagos meisachag l'Hashem. Beis Shammai says that you celebrate as a holiday for God. Chagiga in oilas riya light. Only the chagosim, only the chagiga, but not the oilas riya. Yisrael sabri l'Hashem. Kol the l'Hashem. Any sacrifice that's for Hashem, you're allowed to bring. But that's only if there's a tzorech hayom. If it's the time when it's supposed to be brought is at the holiday. Aval nedarim and nedavis tirekol and creating the Yom Tov. But everyone agrees you can't bring other donations on Yom Tov to the Beis Hamikdash. Okay. It's not a tzorech hayom. Rashi points out the truth is that the chagiga in the oilas riya is also not mamish at tzorech hayom, because you have 7 days of tashlumin, which means you can bring it on Cholamayid, and on Shavuos you can bring it for 7 days afterwards. It's not a real tzorech hayom. However, they allowed you to bring it on Yom Tov, because if we're going to push it off, you're going to end up pushing it off, and so that you can bring it now. There is a tzorech of this time, and they don't make you push it off.
Because the time caused it. The Dorim and the Dove is not based on time. That's
Yeah, that you can bring. We spoke about Eichel Nefesh before, that there has to be a tzorech hayom as well. Okay. Meisvei, the Gemara has a question. I'm Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Reb Shimon ben Elazar seems to have a different detail here than the way Ula just explained the machlekes, and that's going to be a problem. Reb Shimon ben Elazar is a student of Reb Meir. It's a Tana. So far, so good. They're not arguing about oilas that are not associated with Yom Tov, that you can't bring them on Yom Tov. And also not arguing about shlamim of a Yom Tov that are brought on Yom Tov. So far, so good. Right? Everyone agrees to that. So what is the machlekes? Al oilashi shel Yom Tov. So far, so good. Maybe an oilas riya. Okay. But al shlamim she'ina shel Yom Tov. Okay, 1 second. That sounds like Nadarim and Nadavas. There arguing about Nadarim and Nadarim. Other Nadarim and Nadarim means donation that are not associated with the Yom Tov, where Beis Hillel is going to say you're allowed to bring it. Now that does not match with Ula. Beis Shammai Yomrim La Yavi, Beis Hillel Yavi. We have a problem. Even Nadarim and Nadarim, according to Reb Shimon ben Elazar. The Gemara answers, we have to adjust the brisa. We'll say it like this. Everyone agrees that you can't bring a shlamim sheina shel yom tov on yom tov. Shlam shem shel yom tov shekreim b'yom tov, and a shlamim that is associated with the holiday that you can bring. Alman nechlaku. What are they arguing about? Al oila shi shel yom tov, just about the oila sriya. Shabishamrim leyavi b'salam yavi. Okay, and we dropped the smicha thing, so it matches perfectly. We took out the part that we didn't like, and we just it fits. Rabbi Yosef Amar, Rabbi Yosef says, I guess to Ula, he says Tanoi shaklis mialma, which means, have you gotten rid of all the Tanoim in the world, and that's why you had to adjust this brisa? You don't have a problem. Tanoihi, there's different Tanoim. And you quoted to me Reb Shimon ben Elazar as if that's going to be problematic with Ula. It's not a problem. Ula has a different Tana that he's following. Tanoyi, the Tanya was starting to write, so Shlamim aboy machmas yamtiv. Shlamim that come because of the holiday. Beishami yem seimach aleim erev yamtiv. Beishami says you do smicha beforehand, b'sheich them yamtiv, and then you shech them on the holiday. Beishilam seimach aleim b'yamtiv, b'sheich them yamtiv. But it's only shlamim that are associated with the Yom Tov. So here we have a brisa that fits perfectly with the Ula. And Reb Shimon ben Elazar says different. Don't worry about that. Aval Nadarim and Nadav Tivrak Kolen Krevim B'Yom Tov. Very good. Ula has a support. V'hani Tanoi Kani Tanoi. He said this machlokes on how to learn what about Nadarim and Nadavas. Turns out that that's also machlokes that we find in another brisa. Until we get to that point, it's going to be the bottom of the page. So it's sort of like we digress a little bit about other things, but at the end we're going to come out with that yes, there's a machlokes also if Nadarim and Nadavas could be brought, according to Beis Hillel. The Tanya was starting in a brisa. Ein meviim toida b'chag hamatzos b'nei chametz Shabbat. There's 40 loaves of matzah and chametz altogether. 10 of them are chametz that come along with the carbon taida. Taida is a Thanksgiving offering that's brought if someone went over the ocean or went through the desert or was sick or was in prison. And he was let out. He brings this carbon. So shlamim with bread. Can't bring it on Pesach because there's chametz in it. He also can't bring it on Shavuos with Neshu Yom Tov because there's no chalamayid there. There's just the Yom Tov, so you can't bring it on the holiday of Shavuos. But maybe to Adam Tedasai b'Chag Sukkos, but on Sukkos you can bring it and you bring it b'chalamayid. So very nice. People go to the Beis Hamikdash 3 times a year. They would go there for the holiday. If you had to bring a carbon taida, so you would do it on Sukkos because the other holidays you can't do it. Reb Shimon Aimer, Hareyo Aimer b'Chag Hamatzos b'Chag Shavuos and b'Chag Sukkos. The pasuk says Chag Hamatzos, Chag Shavuos, Chag Sukkos. Kol sheba b'Chag Hamatzos, b'Chag Shavuos, b'Chag Sukkos. If I'm allowed to bring it on Pesach, I can bring it on Shavuos and Sukkos. Kol shloi b'Chag Hamatzos, ein b'Chag Shavuos, b'Chag Sukkos. Very interesting. I can't bring it because I wasn't allowed to bring it on Pesach. All of a sudden, I have a din that I can't bring chametz on Sukkot. The Gemara is not going to conclude that this is what it means, but so far that's what we're thinking. That's what Reb Shimon holds. Reb Shimon is Reb Shimon Yochai. We'll see. We're going to adjust it. It doesn't mean exactly the way we said it. Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon Aimer. Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon says, maybe Adam Tedasa b'Chag Sukkot. The Yetze ba Yedecha vas mishum simcha, vein Yetze ba mishum chagiga. You have to eat meat on the holiday. So when you bring your taida on Sukkot, which he says you're allowed to, that you're also satisfying the din of eating meat. But you don't satisfy that you brought a shalmei chagiga, supposed to bring a shlamim for the holiday. Because this was a prior obligation, you can't double dip and bring one sacrifice and say, this is my taida. Oh, and it's also my shalmei chagiga. No. when you comes to eating the meat, it gives you simcha. That doesn't affect. You actually ate meat, which is good, which is part of the mitzvah. But you can't use it as an obligation. By the way, when someone makes a pledge, they do bidding. So are you allowed to use meiser for that? So not afterwards, but beforehand, yes. That's you have to ask your rabbi. The Daf Yomi is not halacha share, but it seems that if when you pledge, what do you pledge? You have money that's meiser. You can give it to whatever. We give it to the shul. We don't. Officially, it was for aniyim. But if you originally you said, look, I have this amount of money, and now they're offering that. Instead of giving it to over there, I'm going to give it to this. I'm going to give it to this. So if that was your original understanding of that bidding, then you can do that. But if afterwards you say, "Oy vey, I just bid. Oh, you know what? I have meiser also. I'll just pay my debt with meiser." No, you can't. You can't use meiser to pay a debt. Well, meiser, there's a whole discussion about it, but basically that was what would come out. But if you originally that was your pledge, so it's different.
So what if the person doesn't go in and give you?
You have to give the meiser to, but you don't have to give it to this place. You give it
still
to
give it to
wherever
the
you
shul
give it.
without getting the aliyah.
No, so even though you planned on giving it, if you want him to pledge.
Yeah.
But if
If he
he
doesn't,
get
then he
aliyah,
does.
He still gives the shul.
He gives it to wherever he wants, right?
Unless
Right.
he
Okay.
intended to give to the shul.
So what had just happened here is Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon tells us that you can't use a prior obligation to fulfill an obligation that you have right now. You can't do that. Amar Mar, we're going to go back to explain this. It's going to be very different than what we just said. You can't bring a carbon taida on Pesach because there's chametz in it. Pshita. What was I thinking? You thought that maybe you have an exception over here, a dispensation that you can have chametz on Pesach. Amar Ravada Barida Rav Yitzchak V'Amila Rav Shmuel Barabba Hachbar Basar Skin with seven moving touching the base of soul. We're not talking about Pesach. We're talking about Erev Pesach. And you have half the day to eat it. So you can't bring it on Erev Pesach because we don't want you to limit the time that you have for a carbon because it's going to become puzzle. You're going to end up burning it. So you have to be able to use all the time. And because on Erev Pesach you only have half the time, so you can't bring it on Erev Pesach. That's why we don't say Mizmor Saidan Erev Pesach. Okay. Lebat Seres Neshu Yom. You really have the whole night as well. It's less than half. Because you have the whole night. You have a quarter of the time. On Shavuos you can't bring it because it's Yom Tov. Kasaba Nedar Mandav is craving the Yom Tov. Very clear, right? You're not allowed to bring Nedarim and Nedavas donation offerings on Yom Tov. But maybe Adam Tidasa b'Chag Sukkos, but you can bring a carbon taida on Sukkos. This is Reb Shimon's opinion. No, this is the Tanakhama's opinion. Reb Shimon said, Umar says, Amos, when on Sukkot are you allowed to bring it? If you say that we're talking about on Yom Tov, you just said that you can't bring it on Shavuos because that's a Yom Tov. So obviously, it must be talking about on Cholamayit. That is what we explained before. Reb Shimon says, the pasuk says, what did you discover?
I just wonder what the rationale is for the other days. Say,
Mizmor Seder. It's also because it's a fast day, Erev Yom Kippur. Also, you can't because it limits the time of eating it to only by day. You can't eat it by night because the fast day basically homemade paste because of the chametz.
Must come with it.
Yeah. So the whole Pesach not, Erev Pesach not, and then Erev Yom Kippur not. Yeah. Now Reb Shimon says that there's a discussion in Shulchan Aruch who you are when you're saying the Mizmor Seder. Are you the Kayan? Are you the owner? Of course, if you have to stand for it, that's a discussion of it. But basically, it's like it's as if it isn't as if, and therefore if you don't bring it, you don't say. Reb Shimon Maryam b'Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos. it has these three holidays. Kol sheba b'chag hamatzos, b'chag Shavuos, b'chag Sukkos. If it's brought on Pesach, then you can bring it on the other holidays. Kol sheba b'chag hamatzos, ein b'chag Shavuos, b'chag Sukkos. Okay. Mar says 1 second. Maskef le Reb Zera. Reb Zera has a question. Hashta saluse mesalpinan. What's going on over here? I'm allowed to go and collect wood on Cholamayid. Nidarma Nadavas Mipai. You're telling me now I can't bring the sacrifice? What's the problem? I'm allowed to do anything that I'm required to do, that's Eichel Nefesh. I'm collecting wood to why can't I shech this? I'm gonna eat it. What's the problem?
And you have
On Cholamayid. Reb Shimon saying you can't bring it on Sukkot. Why? Because you weren't allowed to bring it on Pesach. I'm allowed to collect wood. This is less of a malacha. Amar Abaya Bakrava Kuli Alma Leifligi B'Shari. Abaya comes along and says, you know what? We got the whole discussion wrong. We weren't even talking about if you're allowed to bring it. It's a totally different discussion. We're talking about there's an obligation that you're not allowed to delay bringing the carbon. Now, what's the delay? It says you have to bring it by Sukkot. After Sukkot, it's considered a delay. You've delayed too long. Now, most people learn that that's 3 holidays. You have the year to bring it, and the year is counted by those 3 holidays. So if you pledged before Pesach, and you didn't bring it Pesach right away, so you have Shavuos, and by Sukkot it's going to be
something about the carbonite.
That's something else. That has to do with when the carbon has a specific time. Here we're talking about your pledge. Yeah, you have a pledge. It's called Bal Ta'acher.
Right.
Okay, so now, here's what's happening. Tanakama Savar Shalish Regalim Amrach Mana Afilish like a Sidran. Tanakama says on Pesach you have a problem bringing it. Afilish like a Sidran. That means let's say you pledge before Sukkot. So when's the time going to be up? They hold, Tanakama holds that you have 3 holidays. It's not Sukkot. That's the final time. It's 3 holidays. So if you miss bringing it on Sukkot, then you're going to have to come to the Beis Mikdash in the middle sometime, because you can't bring it on Pesach because of the chametz. You can't bring it on Shavuos because that's a Yom Tov. So you're going to have to come back sometime or stay an extra day to be able to bring it. And so the advice that they're giving is bring it right away on Sukkot. Okay, fine. That's the opinion of the Tanakama. Reb Shimon Savar Kasidron inch like Kasidron light. Reb Shimon says that if you didn't bring it on Sukkot, don't worry about it. You have next Sukkot to bring it. Why? Because Reb Shimon holds that you always have a Pesach Shavuos Sukkot in order to be able to bring it. So if I pledged before Sukkot and I didn't bring it Sukkot, don't worry about it. I can still bring it, not Pesach and not Shavuos, but I can bring it next year Sukkot. Now, how do you say that in the words? I missed the first Sukkot, so whatever.
So you've used up 4?
I used up 3, but Reb Shimon holds that the 3 need to start Pesach. The 3 start on Pesach. So Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. My first one was I got some extra time in there because I would have pledged right before Pesach. Then I would have Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot would be in order. But I pledged a different time. Okay, now the problem is when what's the words of Reb Shimon? It says Kol Sheba b'Chag HaMatzos, Ba b'Chag HaShavuos. Rashi explains that it's supposed to mean what it's supposed to mean is Einet Tzarech Lahavia, not Kol Shaba, but Einet Tzarech. You don't have to bring it on Pesach. You don't have to bring it on Shavuos, and you don't even have to bring it on the first Sukkot because you'll have the next Sukkot to bring it. Yeah, so you have to add a word in there to make it fit. What does Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon say? Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon maybe Adam Tedas b'Chag Sukkot, that a person is allowed to bring it on Sukkot. Amos, when? Ilaim b'Chol Shamayid. If you say that he's talking about on Chol Hamoed, kind of Tanakama. We had that opinion already. Tanakama also said you're allowed to bring a carbon taida or nadarim and nadavis on Chol Hamoed. Ela b'Yamtiv. Wow, you're also allowed to bring it on Yom Tov. Ksaver nadarim and nadavis craving b'Yamtiv. You're also allowed to bring nadarim and nadavis b'Yamtiv. Okay, this was our discussion. Remember at the beginning right? We said that Reb Shimon ben Elazar said that Beis Hillel holds you're allowed to bring nadarim and nadavis and Yom Tov. Well, very nice, because we have a Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon, interesting, Shimon ben Elazar and Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon, that say that also says that you're allowed to bring it on Yom Tov. Why did he choose this? Because he follows his reasoning. The Tanya Reb Shimon Aimer lo yomer chag sukkah shabei kasam medaber lama nemar leimer shezeh achron lo yomer chag sukkah. When it says b'chag hamatzos b'chag hashvuos in the pasuk, it was really talking about chag sukkah. The whole that section was talking about sukkah. So when it wants to say that you have to come 3 times, it doesn't have to say sukkahs because that's what it was talking about. So it could have skipped that word sukkahs. So what's it coming to tell me? It's coming to tell me that that's the last of the holidays that you have the time to bring, because he holds that you have Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot in order. The Sukkot is always going to be the last one. Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon says different. He says that's the cutoff time. I don't even have 3 holidays. According to Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon, you possibly have just 1 holiday, because there's like a line, like January 1st, they have a line that anything before Sukkot is the end date. You don't have really 3 holidays. If you pledged before Pesach, then good, then you'll have all 3. But if you pledged before Shavuos, you only have 2. If you pledged before Sukkot, you only have 1. Why is this litamei? I guess because he argues about what's the pshat in if it's Kasidron. I'm not sure why this has to be litamei. Oh. What he's telling you is that that's your last chance. Yeah, that's what he means to say.
You have to go in order.
Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon holds that you don't have another you don't have Pesach and Shavuos after Sukkot. Once Sukkot comes, even if you pledge right before Sukkot, that's your only chance. Let's go further. Mishum Simcha Mishum Chagiga. We learned that you can't fulfill your obligation of a carbon chagiga by bringing a carbon taida, but by eating it, you are yaitze the mitzvah of simcha. Of course not. You have to bring from chulin. You can't fulfill obligations with other obligations. So it's like the parish, even though you said clearly like this, you said when you pledged your carbon taida, which is considered a donation offering, even though there's a little bit of an obligation, but it's considered a donation. It's a shlamim. Where you say, I'm going to bring a carbon taida. You said, I'm going to bring a carbon taida, and that will also satisfy my chagiga offering. So you actually, when you originally pledged it, you actually said that it's going to fulfill that obligation. And now this is Kedabaimine Reb Shimon ben Lakish me Reb Yechanan. Shimon ben Lakish asked a question like this from Reb Yechanan. It says, someone says, I'm going to bring a carbon taida, and that should also satisfy my other obligation. Harini Nazir Vagaleach Nazir, when he finishes, he has to bring karbanas. So he says those karbanas that I'm going to be obligated to bring, I'll bring them from my Ma'aser Sheni money. So over here it says, Mahu, what's going to be the din? Amalei, Nidar ve'ina yaitza, Nazir ve'ina megaleach. You have to bring the carbon taida, but it doesn't satisfy the chagiga obligation, and the nazir doesn't satisfy the ma'aser sheni cannot be used. Now the explanation over here is because he actually said first what he's going to do, so that pledge takes place first. If he would have said it the other way, that could have changed things. Sounds like he's on this method, Rashi says. And he's saying, give 400 zuz to so-and-so, and he should marry my daughter. Rav Papa says, Arba meya shkel. He takes the money. Is he going to marry the daughter? That's up to him. Why? First he said, give him, and then he says, marry. But if he said, marry, and then give him, then it would be, he would only get it if he, okay. $400 is nothing, don't worry about it. Okay, Yosef Merema v'kamala shmaitim shmeidin afshay. Meremar said this over in his own name. Amalei Ravina le Meremar. Ravina says to Meremar, Atun hachi masnisalei. That's how you learned it. Anan kidaboy minei Reish Lakish me'Rabbi Yochanan masnisalei. We learned this, that this was a conversation that took place between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish asked it as a question, and Rabbi Yochanan responded. Not that this was just something that you can answer logically. Okay, let's leave it over here. On Yom Tov, we'll learn Be'ezus Hashem 8:45. Okay.
Chag Sameach, Rabbi. Thank you.
Sameach.
Okay.
Enjoy.